This podcast does not provide medical advice. Please listen to the complete disclosure at the end of the recording.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everyone Dies, the podcast where we talk about serious illness, dying, death, and bereavement. I'm Marianne Matzo, a nurse practitioner, and I use my experience from working as a nurse for 44 years to help answer your questions about what happens at the end of life.
And I'm Charlie Navarrete, an actor in New York City, and here to ask questions that you may have while listening to our podcast. We are both here because we believe that the more you know, the better prepared you are to make difficult decisions when the need arises.
So please relax and get yourself something delightful to snack and sip on. And Thank you for spending the next hour with Charlie and me as we talk about mortality, or the fact that everyone dies.
Yes.
And we're also waking the dead. You know, Charlie, I came up with this topic for today because I was grading some student papers. I teach death and dying course at the University of Maryland. And the assignment this week for students was to write their advanced directive. And one of the students didn't do it. And she put in her journal,
because she's immortal?
No, she said, I don't like to think about this. And I said,
okay.
This is a tough course to be in if you're not going to think about it.
Yeah, so why is she in the course? Good point.
Well, it was, I think sometimes people take it because it can be used as an elective, and people think it'll be an easy elective.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, it's not. But it's certainly an interesting class, I think. But anyway, so I thought we should talk about mortality and, the fact that everyone dies, because even though we don't like to talk about it, there's a certain reality there, right?
Yeah, because everyone dies. So
yeah. So in our first half, we have our recipe of the week and a story about strawberries and life. In the second, I'm going to be talking about the horse on the dining room table. And in our third half, Everyone Dies once again wakes the dead with this week's singer-songwriter of the week, Neil Noble from Baltimore, Maryland. So Charlie, how you doing?
Well, fine. It's a little hot here in the big city, the concrete jungle and all that. But it's cooling off a bit. But you guys out in Oklahoma, you're still in the hundreds, aren't you?
We're still in the hundreds, and we are on day 2 of no water.
What do you mean no water?
We got back to the lake. We live at Lake Eufaula, and the water department sent out an email that said, we have a leak. If anybody sees water bubbling up anywhere, will you let us know, because we can't find the leak.
This reminds me of the opening of the Beverly Hillbillies. There's
which
Jed.
Was funny. The bubbling crude. So it was funny to get the email, but 2 days later of no water is no longer funny. We're hauling water up from the lake to flush the toilets, and I am no longer amused, and they still have not found the leak. And I keep saying to David, there has to be a constitutional right to clean water and taking a shower when you want to. I'm acting like a princess, but I don't do well without a daily shower, at least one.
I see. Yes.
So that's probably more than you wanted to know.
But thanks for sharing it with me and thousands of people.
So I'm using like these little toilets thingies, clothy things.
Yep. Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, I just want to get under the water. And my plants it's 100 degrees out. I can't water.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So they're like, Mom, we're thirsty.
Feed me.
Yeah, I know. And it's so sad watching them shrivel. Well, what am I going to do?
It's a little shop of horrors.
It is. It is. I need to cut a vein and feed them.
Feed me, Seymour. Feed me.
So that's my story.
And you're
What
sticking
do you
to
have
it.
for us today?
Well, while you can listen to this show at any time, we are recording this in the dog days of summer. And if summer was in the form of a dessert, our recipe for strawberry lemonade bar is it. A lovely marriage of sweetness and tartness makes this summer favorite something you'll long for the whole year. The recipe is so simple, and you can get it on the funeral lunch table in less than an hour. Submitted for your approval. A strawberry pie combines with a lemon bar. Yes, that's what you get with this dessert. The strawberry lemon custard makes a good match with the shortbread crust. Then a sprinkle of powdered sugar adds a touch of beauty to this lovely treat. And speaking of strawberries, Pena Chadron writes about an old Buddhist story in her book, The Wisdom of No Escape, How to Love Yourself and the World. And here's an excerpt. There is a story of a woman running away from tigers. She runs and runs, and the tigers are getting closer and closer. When she comes to the edge of a cliff, she sees some vines there, so she climbs down and holds onto the vines. Looking down, she sees there are tigers below her as well. She then notices that a mouse is gnawing away at the vine to which she is clinging. She also sees a beautiful little bunch of strawberries close to her, growing out of a clump of grass. She looks up and she looks down. She looks at the mouse. Then she just takes a strawberry, puts it in her mouth, and enjoys it thoroughly. Tigers above, tigers below. This is actually the predicament that we are always in terms of our birth and death. Each moment is just what it is. It might be the only moment of our life. It might be the only strawberry we'll ever eat. We could get depressed about it, or we could finally appreciate it and delight in the preciousness of every single moment of our life.
That's really a really good metaphor of our lives, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, yes, and when we allow ourselves to think that and not look at what we don't have, but yeah, even in something small like this, you're just taking a bite of that strawberry. So you have that. So with that, please go to our webpage for the recipe on various levels and additional resources for this program. We hope you will follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and remember to rate and review this podcast. We have a link in our show notes that makes rating our podcast easy, and that would be so helpful to us. As a licensed nonprofit organization, we are dependent on your kindness and always appreciate your tax-deductible donations. If you find this podcast to be of help to you, please go to our webpage to donate so that we can continue to provide quality shows about serious illness, dying, death, and bereavement at www.everyonedies.org. That's dies.org. Marianne, what do you got?
I was trying to think of something witty to say, but
I was going to come back with, penicillin is just this wonderful cure.
Yeah. So thanks for that. So back in 1985, for those of you who can remember that, and those of you who can't, that's okay. Richard Kalish wrote this story called The Horse on the Dining Room Table. And sometimes we hear in palliative care and hospice care, people will talk about death as the horse on the dining room table. But I don't think the newer generation of folk really know what that story refers to. So I wanted to read that to you today. And here's the story by Richard Kalish. I struggled up the slope of Mount Avmandu to meet the famous guru of Nepsim, an ancient sage whose name I was forbidden to place in print. I was much younger then, but the long and arduous hike exhausted me, and despite the cold, I was perspiring heavily when I reached the plateau where he made his home. He viewed me with a patient, almost amused look, and I smiled wanly at him between attempts to gulp the thin air into my lungs. I made my way across the remaining 100 meters and slowly sat down on the ground, propping myself up against a large rock just outside his abode. We were both silent for several minutes, and I felt the tension in me rise, then subside until I was calm. Perspiration prickled my skin, but the slight breeze was pleasantly cool, and soon I was relaxed. Finally, I turned my head to look directly into the clear brown eyes, which were bright with his lined face. I realized that I would need to speak. "Father," I said, "I need to understand something about what it means to die before I can continue my studies." He continued to gaze at me with his open, bemused expression. "Father," I went on, "I want to know what a dying person feels when no one will speak with him, nor be open enough to permit him to speak about his dying." He was silent for 3, perhaps 4 minutes. I felt at peace because I knew he would answer. Finally, as though in the middle of a sentence, he said, "It is the horse on the dining room table." We continued to gaze at each other for several minutes. I began to feel sleepy after my long journey, and I must have dozed off. When I woke up, he was gone, and the only activity was my own breathing. I retraced my steps down the mountains, still feeling calm, knowing that his answer made me feeling good, but not knowing why. I returned to my studies and gave no further thought to the event, not wishing to dwell upon it, but feeling secure that someday I should understand. Many years later, I was invited to the home of a casual friend for dinner. It was a modest home in a typical California development. The 8 or 10 other guests, people I did not know, and I sat in the living room drinking Safeway scotch and bourbon and dipping celery sticks and raw cauliflower into watery cheese dip. The conversation, initially haunting, became more animated as we got to know each other and developed points of contact. The drinks undoubtedly also affected us. Eventually, the hostess appeared and invited us into the dining room for a buffet dinner. As I entered the room, I noticed with astonishment that a brown horse was sitting quietly on the dining room table. Although it was small for a horse, it filled much of the large table. I caught my breath but didn't say anything. I was the first to enter, so I was able to turn to watch the other guests. They responded much as I did. They entered, saw the horse, gasped or stared, but said nothing. The host was the last to enter. He let out a silent shriek, looking rapidly from the horse to each of the guests with a wild stare. His mouth formed soundless words. Then, in a voice choked with confusion, he invited us to fill our plates from the buffet. His wife, equally disconcerted by what was clearly an unexpected horse, pointed to the name cards which indicated where each of us was to sit. The hostess led me to the buffet and handed me a plate. Others lined up behind me, each of us quiet. I filled my plate with rice and chicken and sat at my place. The others followed suit. It was cramped sitting there, trying to avoid getting too close to the horse while pretending that no horse was there. My dish overlapped with the edge of the table. Others found other ways to avoid physical contact with the horse. The host and hostess seemed as ill at ease as the rest of us. The conversation lagged. Every once in a while, someone would say something in an attempt to revive the earlier pleasant and innocuous discussion, but the overwhelming presence of the horse so filled our thoughts that talk of taxes or politics or the lack of rain seemed inconsequential. Dinner ended and the hostess brought coffee. I can recall everything on my plate and yet no memory of having eaten. We drank in silence, or all of us trying not to look at the horse, yet unable to keep our eyes or our thoughts anywhere else. I thought several times of saying, "Hey, there's a horse on the dining room table," but I hardly knew the host, and I didn't want to embarrass him by mentioning something that obviously discomforted him, at least as much as it disconcerted me. After all, it was his house, and what do you say to a man with a horse on a dining room table? I could have said that I do not mind, but that was not true. Its presence upset me so much that I enjoyed neither the dinner nor the company. I could have said that I knew how difficult it was to have a horse on one's dining room table, but that wasn't true either. I have no idea. I could have said something like, how do you feel about having a horse on your dining room table? But I didn't want to sound like a psychologist. Perhaps I thought if I ignore it, it'll go away. Of course, I knew that it wouldn't. It didn't. I later learned that the host and hostess were hoping the dinner would be a success despite the horse. They felt that to mention it would make us so uncomfortable that we wouldn't enjoy our visit. Of course, they didn't enjoy the evening anyway. They were fearful that we would try to offer them sympathy, which they didn't want, or understanding, which they needed but could not accept. They wanted the party to be a success, so they decided to try to make the evening as enjoyable as possible. But it was apparent that they, like their guests, could think of little else than the horse. I excused myself shortly after dinner and went home. The evening had been terrible. I never wanted to see the host and hostess again, although I was eager to seek out the other guests and learn what they felt about the occasion. I felt confused about what happened and extremely tense. The evening had been grotesque. I was careful to avoid the host and hostess after that, and I did my best to stay away altogether from the neighborhood. Recently, I visited Neptune again. I decided to seek out the guru once more. He was still alive, although nearing death, and he would speak only to a few. I repeated my journey and eventually found myself sitting across from him. Once again, I asked, Father, I want to know what a dying person feels when no one will speak with him, nor be open enough to permit him to speak about his dying. The old man was quiet, and we sat without speaking for nearly an hour. Since he didn't bid me to leave, I remained. Although I was content, I feared that he would not share his wisdom, but he finally spoke. The words came slowly. My son, it is the horse on the dining room table. It is a horse that visits every house and sits on every dining room table. The tables of the rich and of the poor, of the simple and of the wise. The horse just sits there, but its presence makes you wish to leave without speaking of it. If you leave, you will always fear the presence of the horse. When it sits on your table, you will wish to speak of it, but you may not be able to. However, if you speak about the horse, then you will find that others can also speak about the horse. Most others, at least, if you are gentle and kind as you speak. The horse will remain on the dining room table, but you will not be distraught. You will enjoy your repast, and you will enjoy the company of your host and hostess. Or, if it is your table, you will enjoy the presence of your guests. You cannot make magic or to have the horse disappear, but you could speak of the horse and thereby render it less powerful. The old man then rose and motioned me to follow and walk slowly to his hut. Now we shall eat, he said quietly. I entered the hut and had difficulty adjusting to the dark. The guru walked to a cupboard in the corner and took out some bread and some cheese, which he placed on a mat. He motioned me to sit and share his food. I saw a small horse sitting quietly in the center of the mat. He noticed this and said, "That horse need not disturb us." I thoroughly enjoyed the meal. Our discussion lasted far into the night, while the horse sat there quietly throughout our time together. So that's the story of the horse on the dining room table. And as we say, everyone dies. And many people hate seeing our name come across their social media feed. They don't like being reminded. But ignoring death, the inevitability of death, does not make death go away. It
No.
does not make it any less relevant or real in our lives. The horse on the dining room table is not going away. Wouldn't it really be better to acknowledge the horse, call it death, accept it, live with it, so that we can get on with our task of living fully, gratefully, joyfully, turning in our assignments about death and dying when you're taking a death and dying course?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ignoring these things, pretending that they aren't real, pretending that people aren't sick, only isolates those people who are in that situation. And it isolates you from something that we all share, which is our mortality. So everyone dies. It's okay. It's part of life. Let's start talking about it. Had you ever heard that story before, Charlie?
No. I kept thinking, what is it? Pooh. The elephant in the room. 300-pound gorilla. Yeah. No, I've never heard that. That's wonderful. I've never heard that before. The horse in the room. But it's so true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And even here, I was with some friends last night. All of them Brazilians, and so everyone started to talk about what they did. And one of my friends visiting from Brazil said, "Oh, Charlie talks about death," and it was nice. It in that nobody freaked out. They just found that very interesting that somebody would talk about death. And I explained, well, yes, because everyone dies, and it was perfect. He could not have scripted it better. I said, yeah, because everyone dies. And someone asked, well, what's the name of your podcast? And I said, Everyone Dies. But it was just that. It just turned into an interesting conversation. Nobody found it macabre. And I don't know if I was going to say just because, they're not, they're all from Brazil, but no, it's not true because obviously death is universal. But I don't know, it was just nice to have a conversation with no one freaking out or feeling that was a taboo subject or that I was nuts to be doing, talking about death. But it's there. It's just the way it is, and like we always say about preparation. It's going to happen, and either it's going to happen to you in a good way, and you have a good death, or at the last minute, horrible things will happen. There's no preparation. Everyone panics, and which is not good because everyone dies.
Well, and I think that you can kind of take the teeth away from death. A lot of people are very frightened about death. And I tell people, if you want to stop being afraid of death, learn about it.
Yeah.
Learn about what happens. Learn about, listen to the podcast and educate yourself, because the more you know, the less you're going to be afraid of it.
Exactly.
It's like the fear of the unknown.
The fear of the unknown.
Anxiety.
Exactly.
So educate yourself and you'll be less fearful because it'll be a more known area. And trust me, I know this. I'm an educator. I've seen it happen over and over again. It's like, yes, I feel better about it. I feel better about it because I know more about it.
Right.
Are you ever going to be? Are we ever going to go into that good night and say, go skipping? I don't think that that's human nature to say, yes, sir. Sign me up.
You're right. It's not human nature, but it depends also on the individual, because some will, I'm not saying embrace it, but acknowledge that, okay, the end is near, and am I going to just want to run and hide in the closet, or do I want to prepare myself, prepare friends and family, just let people know what I want so that you have that good death. Yeah.
So now you know the story.
Yeah. Now you know the whole story or the rest of the. What was that? You know the rest of. Who said that? Now you know the rest of the story. It was some
I just said it.
broadcaster years ago. Oh, I'm sorry. It must have been you. Yeah. There was Eric Severide. I don't remember, but it's some, one of the great old
Look it up, Charlie.
announcers. Sure. And with that, in our third half, welcome to Everyone Dies, Wakes the Dead. Da-da-da. Our ongoing series featuring original songs that could be played at a funeral, one that is appropriate, and one that is likely not, which of course is always my favorite, to be included in the third half of Everyone Dies. We invite singer-songwriters to submit your work for possible inclusion in our third half segment. Please see the show notes for how to wake the dead with us. This week's artist is Neil M. Noble, a Washington, D.C. native who now lives in the Baltimore area. He is also an adjunct professor who teaches construction-related courses in the Baltimore area. He and his wife enjoy traveling and spending time with family, friends, and their dog. Neil submitted 2 songs, and he writes that both songs deeply reflect my thoughts, feelings, and emotions about my father and mother. These are very much applicable to other loved ones. The first song is titled, A Limb Has Fallen. Let's listen.
A limb has fallen from the family tree. I'm hearing a voice that says, grieve not for me. Remember the best times, the laughter, the song, the good life lived while I was strong. Safe home to the ones who left you behind. Safe home from the ones who you left behind. Safe home to the ones who you miss too. Safe home from the ones who will miss you. Continue my heritage, I'm counting on you. Keep smiling and surely the sun will shine through. My mind is at ease, my soul is at rest, remembering all how I truly was blessed. Safe home to the ones who left you behind. Safe home from the ones who you left behind. Safe home to the ones who you miss too. Safe home from the ones who will miss you. Continue traditions, no matter how small. Go on with your life, don't worry about faults. I miss you all dearly, so keep up your chin until the day comes we're together again. Safe home to the ones who left you behind. Safe home from the ones who you left behind. Safe home to the ones who you miss too. Safe home from the ones who miss you.
Yeah, my little notey here.
You know, he doesn't say which one is for his mother, which one's for his father, but just listening to this makes me feel like this one was written for his mom.
Yeah, and it's funny when because when I listened to it, just the refrain, safe home, right? Shoot, I should have written this down. Safe home. That's what. His refrain, safe home. Yeah, I thought it was about his family, but I didn't specify it to a parent. It just felt like any any family member, and not even necessarily had to be a family member, friends who were close to you. Yeah, so I was surprised that, it was specifically, when I read about, his mother and father. But that, yeah, yeah. And it was not just a
I
whole
also think,
theme of just moving forward. Like, life goes
yeah,
on yeah, yeah. I'm sorry, what?
I was thinking it's funny that so many of these singer-songwriters send these songs, but they're not necessarily one that you could play at a funeral and one that you maybe shouldn't. Like
Right.
for both of Neil's, both of them would be wonderful at a funeral. And I didn't want to disqualify him for not following directions, but because I liked both songs.
Yeah, yeah.
And the second one reminded me. Oh, you're gonna play the second one. I'll save my note on that for a minute.
Okay, so let's listen to Neil's second song entitled "Remember Me."
Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there, I did not die. Please just remember me now and then. See a bit of me in another citizen. I'm the silky sunlight on the ripened grain. I'm the ever-gentle autumn rain. I'm the soft star that shines at night. I'm the welcome breeze that lifts your kite. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there, I do not sleep. I'm the four winds that blow across the seven seas that ebb and flow. I'm the glee and sparkle in the laugh of a child. Through tears, hurt, and pain, I am the smile. I'm the sunrise of a new day's dawn. I'm the fond remembrance of a sunset's yawn. Just remember me now and then. See a bit of me in another citizen. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there, I did not die. So please just remember me now and then. See a bit of me in another citizen. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there, I did not die.
Marianne, I liked how he talks about, now and then, see me in, I'm saying see me in another person, but he says, see me another citizen, just, for the rhyme scheme he had set up. But just that, remember me because I haven't died.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice because, you don't forget people until they die. Or until you decide. I don't know, because I've had friends who move on quickly. If it's family member who's died or a close friend, some really hang on to that, and others, as with the grieving process, eventually it, that feeling and emotion settles in. And it just becomes part of your life, and it's not something which, just suddenly jumps out at you. But it's that. It's just that, you move on after someone dies.
Well, it's funny. We were packing up because we're moving, and there were all these old pictures from Dave's wife who had died from way back in her family. And none of his kids wanted those pictures, and there's just nobody to give them to.
Yeah.
And, we only got so much room. And so Dave said, I hate to do this, but, what am I going to do with these? So we put them in the donation pile, and I said, now they're really dead. Because, they're alive as long as we can remember them. You can pull out a picture, and somebody like me can say, oh, who's this person? Who's this person?
Right.
If somebody's hopefully written on the back, tell you who they are. But, once those pictures go, then they're really dead because there's no remembrance of them. There's nobody to remember who they were.
With, clients, I help sometimes with, with different things about aging and end of life issues, including downsizing. Just what you said. I mean, people just have so many pictures, and some are real sad because they have so many, they don't want to throw them away. And I say, listen, pick out the ones you really, really like, and it's still usually a pretty big pile. And I said, let's take a picture of the pictures. That way you will have this on your phone, and it's not the same of actually having that picture, but it's still, you will have that picture, but it's all on your iPhone, instead of having shoebox after shoebox with pictures. And that's, I don't know, with a lot of people, I mean, that's been helpful because they're still able to downsize, but they still have those pictures. But I do understand, I mean, you and I grew up at a time before iPhones and everything. So there is something nice about having that picture in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And also, those pictures are a part of affluence. Like in my family, I have one of those plastic shoe boxes that's half full of pictures. That's all I have of family pictures. Okay. Dave had boxes of pictures because his wife's family had some money. They were able to take pictures. Right. They did that kind of thing. We didn't, Yeah. I don't know if you guys did, but...
Yeah, we just stopped taking pictures because my family are all vampires. So when we took pictures, yes, it was silly. There was nobody in the picture.
I get it.
Because with vampires, it's not only just with mirrors. You can't capture their image in a picture. Okay, so that's this week's tidbit. And with that...
Thank you to Neil for your music. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Neil. Please stay tuned for the continuing saga of Everyone Dies, and thank you for listening. Like sand through an hourglass, so are the numbers of galaxies. They are just too numerous to count. Marianne, have you seen this week's the photos from the...
Oh, God, yes.
Holy jeez.
Aren't they incredible?
And there's more to come. I guess there's more detail that, they're downloading and everything, but that's... Yeah, and to think it's just, that light is from billions of years ago. It's just, it is humbling. Yeah.
What a world, huh?
What a world. What a world. And so this is Charlie Navarrete, and from Marianne Evans, better known by her pen name, George Eliot, our dead are never dead to us until we have forgotten them.
And I'm Marian Matzo, and we'll see you next week. Remember, the only way to cope well is to reach out for the joy in every moment. We hope you find your own strawberry every day. And remember, every day is a gift. Goodbye.
Bye.
This podcast does not provide medical advice. All discussion on this podcast, such as treatments, dosages, outcomes, charts, patient profiles, advice, messages, and any other discussion are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Always seek the advice of your primary care practitioner or other qualified health providers with any questions that you may have regarding your health. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard from this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Everyone Everyone Dies does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, practitioners, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned in this podcast. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast by persons appearing on this podcast at the invitation of Everyone Dies or by other members is solely at your own risk.